Good afternoon. Pleased to have everyone back again that's been monitoring our MTDI meetings. We have a great list of participants today, and especially pleased to have Commissioner Dye, a rock star in maritime policy, providing some observations today to us. And we're going to start off with her when we go through the rigmarole that we usually go through. And she's going to give us some of her observations from Fact Finding 29 and other observations. So I want to hear from her. And we've got a great list of participants from the carrier industry. It's our second panel. This is actually our 16th meeting on MTDI. And I will have to say we've had a great group of participants all the way through the process. And I know this group will do equally as well, providing advice and recommendations on data elements, data gaps, information that should be made available to the public. And so we are getting ready for a data summit meeting in June. I think everybody who's participated is going to get an invite, and they can either attend virtually or in person. We're actually going to try to do that. So we're looking throughout the building to scour for spaces. Unfortunately, right now we only have one elevator operating, so we're hoping that everything will work out. But anyways, things are moving forward, and I really wanted to thank everybody who's been participating in this. Participants have been forwarded the questions, so we'll go into those questions after Commissioner Dye's spoken. These meetings are being recorded and will be posted on the FMC YouTube page and on the Maritime Transportation Data Initiative webpage. Please, if one of the participants chooses to share something, use the share function for the public to be able to review that. I also want to point out this is a live public meeting. Only participants will be able to speak. We will be posting the meeting on the MTDI webpage for public access. However, we encourage anyone to submit any public comment they have in relation to this meeting or any other meeting. And that can be submitted at maritimedata@fmc.gov. It's an email address. Should you choose to submit public feedback, please reference whether it is in reference to an individual meeting or whether it is a general comment. We will be posting submitted materials and comments on our webpage, and we cannot post PowerPoint, so we ask the material be provided in Word or PDF format. Please do not include any personal identifiable information, PII, on any submission to the FMC. And as I say, this is the last of our meetings at present, unless we change our minds. But we're working towards our data summit on June 1st. And so we'll be focused on that. And as I said, I have had Commissioner Dye here. She's done so many things in the maritime policy arena and been one of our leaders at the FMC and has engaged in quite a few congestion-related meltdowns. And she's been working as she's wrapping up Fact Finding 29 on some issues that we thought would be real helpful to be considered in this context. And so would love to hear, please use whatever time you want, because it's critically important to hear from Commissioner Dye.
Thank you, Commissioner Bensel. Can you hear me well?
It's good.
That's good. I really appreciate the invitation. And I have been following your meetings, and you've done great work. And the Commission appreciates it. And I know everybody involved also appreciates as well. I've been pretty much full-time focusing on the international ocean supply chain since 2014. After the labor dislocations in LA Long Beach, the Commission became engaged on what we could do to help. We held port forums around the country, and I joke that I was ordered to go to New Orleans, and I brought up then for the first time about the need to consider the international ocean freight delivery system as a whole, from end to end, as a complex system. We held then the first innovation teams at the commission, and this was the first time that I had done this. It's at the intersection of teamwork, port operations, and innovation. Small groups. We know the best teams are from 5 to 12 people, representing the 12 major supply chain actors. And I said, I'd like one team, and I got 3, and we closed it up. And the people, I still keep in touch with many of the people who participated in those teams. And so, as you know, the best teams are focused. And so I said, pick one thing that will provide the most reliability and resilience to our ocean supply chain. And it has to be in being something that you can run down. And everybody quickly agreed that visibility was the most important thing that's needed. As we all do, when you're running teams, I began to talk to people around the world who were the leaders internationally in supply chain technology, to feed the teams and help them in their deliberations. And this is the work that we did is described in the 2017 report that I did that's still on my webpage about the innovation teams. The best advice that I got from, in fact, I just talked to her just recently, she's changed companies, was that you have to know what you want to do. Now, if you're in a private company, you have an approach that works for you. If you are in the government, you have other interests that you want to see addressed. If you want to harmonize the supply chain, which is something no one else in the world has done, by the way,
Yeah.
you have to be able to tell every significant supply chain actor what he needs to know, when he needs to know it. The most important piece of information or knowledge that we got from our original discussions, what we call this notice of availability from the ports. And many people call that a notice of accessibility, because we're talking about the point at which a shipper is informed that his cargo is accessible. If you send your trucker, if it's merchant haulage, during a particular time period, we promise it will be accessible. When you think about it, that would solve right there. Just to do that, that would solve a lot of the problems that we still grapple with today. So as I say, we never forget a good idea, and we carried that concept into the demurrage and detention rule, interpreted rule. I've told our carriers that if you do that, you're reasonable, right out of the box, because that would be the most valuable thing. After that time, I was invited to speak around the world, and I spoke, believe it or not, at cybersecurity conferences, and I learned even more. The best one was in Singapore. It was moderated by Lars Jensen. And the keynote speaker said, I think because many businesses had showed up at the conference thinking, I will find out what to buy, and then my company will be well run. And she said, not so fast. Don't waste your money. Fix your operations first, and then buy what you need to complement your operations. And that's what we've done since then with port operations. As I say, there are 3 things. The first is that these problems are not new. Despite the pandemic, the problems, the things that are happening, the dislocations in the supply chain are the same things that happen every peak season and every cargo surge. Second of all, no one supply chain actor can fix the worst problems alone. So it's going to take some direct engagement to work these things out. And finally, my third thing is that we need more commitment, mutual commitment in the supply chain. But that's another topic. I think that harmonizing, just let's cut to the chase here. Harmonizing the supply chain would be, is when I think about what is my real interest in the supply chain, is to increase American competitiveness. If we could really do this, we know that most cargo gets delivered in the United States. So we're not doing badly. But to think that people would act together in concert based on what they know it's a sea change for the freight delivery system. And is that going to come easily? No. How do you find out what people want to know? Ask them. But often you will find that when you ask for a particular piece of information from your supply chain colleagues, they might have to change their own operations to make it available. I'm a little skeptical of the person who says they just need to share information, because the information that's developed for one business may not be exactly what another supply chain actor needs to know. And that's going to take a lot of hard work. It's time consuming. I have chosen a couple of those problems that we've been holding lots of discussions about as part of Fact Finding 29, just to sort of get the effort moving. But is this helpful to your group at all, Commissioner Bensel?
Oh yeah. It's the same thing that we're talking about. And we've talked before on the ERD issue of trying to come up with recommendations and not prescribing technology and coming up with the standard terminology that everyone can rely on. And I think you're right. Everybody needs something from someone else. And so sharing should be okay if you get some value in other areas. So I think we want to look at your specific recommendations moving forward, and I want to get the value of everything that's out there. So putting everything on the record, and we've spoken before on the innovation teams, and it's funny because with the pandemic, we've been able to do some of the same things publicly that we would have never thought about doing, and I've been amazed.
That's true. That's very true.
That we've been able to get that same opportunity, but using technology that I'd never thought we would have. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it's the same, and you're right. You brought up, we've spoken before, the need to get to end-to-end standardization, so that there's an expectation of when cargo is delivered, and when carriers make changes to their schedule, at what point should that be transmitted, and who should get it, and who should provide information. Sometimes carriers will provide information that a terminal should be providing because they're more in possession of the actual real time.
That's very true. That's very true. The one when we've described this to one of our major terminals in Los Angeles, and he said, it's like it's time to check in.
Yeah.
Right? Before the airlines did that, that process was chaotic. And
Yeah.
now it just appears in your email or on your phone, and it's easy and you comply. So I think there's, I do think that, I think there's plenty of technology available today. But the content, for me, I think the content is the most important thing.
Yeah, no, it's basically the action item that precipitates whatever action is there. So no, we're really happy to have your views. I think we'll have further dialogue on this, and I want to talk directly about what your recommendations are on ERD or any other issues in terms of this. And I think you've made this recommendation before, and we just went from one crisis to another. And
that's right.
I think,
It's real life.
Right. So, but we've got a great panel of folks here today that we're
That's
gonna.
great. Thank you. Great work. I really appreciate it. And I'll be interested to hear the rest of the comments.
It's great to have you here. Thank you for doing this. I spoke to you earlier about sharing your insights, and so you're our star panelist for today.
Thank you, as always.
So
thanks. Bye-bye. I appreciate it.
Okay, feel free to stay on if you need and want.
Definitely.
So today we've got a great panel of carrier witnesses. We've got Simon Park, head of IT in HMM. We've got Leo Chiang, Vice President Yang Ming, America Corp. Roman Ramirez, Sales Operations Director, Zim Integrated Shipping Services. Jake Meehan, the head of Ocean EDI Integration from Maersk. Kathy Scott, VP of Shipping IT Digital Business from Crowley. Please say hello to Ray, who's a good friend of mine, Ray Fitzgerald. Tom Takasi, is that correct? Takasi? Okay. VP Costco Shipping Lines, North America. Dharmesh Patel, VP CIO of CMA CGM America. And we've already provided everyone with some questions. Feel free, I know sometimes it can get redundant. So present your information if you think it's been covered adequately and you don't need to talk about that, or you want to talk about something else. We're here to listen to you, to get your advice on your recommendations on data and how we can use data more effectively. And then after this, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Kristen Monaco, who's our chief economist and head of our Bureau of Transportation Analysis, and she's going to give some insight on going forward with MTDI. And so with that, I'm going to turn them over. Go ahead and answer all of the questions in entirety, and then I'll turn to the next participant. So Simon, you're up first, and please proceed.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Simon Park, head of IT department in HMM America. First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak out. As you know, data is very important for all industries. So I think, especially in case of shipping business, more important than other businesses, because shipping companies have lots of relevant parts. For example, rail company, truckers, terminals, depots, customs and customers, and so on. So many relevant parties. Actually, today's my main topic is data standardization and execution. As far as I know, some organizations have been trying to make a standard for exchanging data in logistics area. So, actually, it is not easy, but not impossible. The problem is all shipping and logistic companies and shippers have a lot of old and current data, and EDI connection since the company is established. Usually, most of them are using EDI connection. Usually, we are using an EDI connection for exchanging data with a relevant party. Basically, EDI is one-to-one private connection, not common format. That is problem. So many carriers try to change EDI connection to API. API is a common format to save time and cost when they need. Usually, new EDI setup, in my case, it takes at least 2 weeks in HML to set it up with other partners, it's terminal or depot and customers. Some cases takes more than 1 month. It's very time consuming to set up the exchange data. In addition, if a company change data format with one of our standard form, is the other party must change too. Otherwise, there will be a big trouble to send and receive data. There's a problem. So at the moment, HM America have over 1,000 EDI running now. So many EDI connections with our partners. So I think it will be impossible to all EDIs to transfer API at the same time or a standard format. That's why it is still the same position now. So, however, most of the shipping companies have been paying for not small cost to establish EDI when they are planning to expand the service, new service, calling new port, use new rail company, new trucker, new customer. We have to set up new EDI. So it takes, takes a while to set up. It is one of the dilemma from shipping company side. If they get, if we can get some big benefit or obligations when we follow standard data format, we might be highly motivated. I'm not sure who can read that one of a big project. I think our company definitely cannot. We can't. So, in my opinion, FMC, its government regulatory agency, might be reading this very changeable mission because FMC is a neutral body, not private company. It's also we have a power. So I think that is our current position. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Simon. That was great. Yeah, I mean, it's always a challenge. I think we're looking not at establishing standards of technology like API and EDI, but the elements that we would use to transmit information and hope that the industry can put in place information that would satisfy that in whatever form. But you're right. Hopefully, we'll be getting to API information as opposed to EDI. It's the wave of the future. As I say, when I order a Domino's pizza, I get pretty good information real time on when the pizza is cooked, when it's on its way, and when it's going to get there, and when we'll usually take a picture on my front doorstep. Leo Chiang, why don't you go ahead now and provide what information you can.
Yes, Commissioner. First of all, I'm not a data or IT savvy. I'm from a marine operations side, and I just try to give everybody today some observations, some comment that I gather from all my associates here. And I also attended the meeting last week, and we got some good, very valuable comment and input from all the other attendants last week. So I just want maybe I should avoid duplicated input. For the first topic, the key data elements, I think the first 2 points, we are rolling in those EDI practice in our daily work, daily job, and the daily customer service, and including the terminals, the export, either booking or VGM or manifest, anything like that. We've been doing that for quite some time. And I think I can focus on the maybe the third one, what data that Yang Ming or carriers do not have the access to, which can help us to deal with the day-to-day challenges. I think the terminals export ERD, the earliest receiving date, if it's our wishful thinking that if we can get that kind of ERD update from the terminal effectively, timely, whenever they make the change, because as we know that ERD, the early receiving day, is 100% managed and controlled by the marine terminal, dependent upon their yard situation and also their density or traffic, and that are always subject to change. If that changes, current practice is that they will post them on their website. And when we send out the booking forecast to our customers or confirmation, maybe a weeks ago, we used that maybe a forecast or projected the ERD, but that got changed, and it could happen multiple times. And if the customer fail to look at terminal's website, they might miss that latest information, and they will come to carrier and complain, say, yeah, I didn't get this, and then you got me it cost me extra trucking fee or charges. We don't want to have that. But if terminal can help us feed that kind of updated information to carriers, we can also let our customer know in almost real time. We did some survey. We've been engaged with so many terminals that we've been working with. Some say they are very interested. They want to know more. What kind of a sample? What kind of a format? What kind of a vehicle or way to do that? Some are saying, no, we are not ready system-wise, or they have already enough operation challenges. They they want to focus something else, and some had just told me that they got no plan to do that. But I think most of the time we got some neutral or positive feedback. They are interested and they want to know more. I think this part, according to my understanding, limited understanding, the EDI may not be able to satisfy this kind of need. Maybe API will be the effective way. So that's the on the ERD side. Secondly, the shippers confirmation back to carriers. If we can have that kind of data, that kind of update from our exporters here, it will be helping us deal with the vessel utilization and also the terminal. We can, if they are having some no-show or late come, we can utilize those unused slots or space for other customers, or even other empty repositioning purpose. Right now, we are sending that booking confirmation to the exporters with some URL link in that email, so they can click on that and tell us, oh, I booked 100, but next week I could only come out with maybe 75. That will be very helpful for us to manage our valuable space on the ship, and also for the terminal, they can react to that kind of a change. but some customers are willing to give us that kind of update, but some are maybe just no response. But if we can have that kind of a feedback or input from our exporters, that will help not just carriers, it will also help truckers, the terminals, and also even other exporters in the States who are looking for that space on the same ship. I think that's for the first topic. And the second one, data transmission. For import, I think if the marine terminal operators can provide some timely information to carriers and their customers that their import loads, import containers are temporarily moved to so-called out of spot or closed areas for a period of time, because there maybe the operation requirement, operations concerns, they have to free up some space to work the ship. And for those dwelling import containers, they have to move somewhere else that is not in the normal stacks. And but I know this is a temporary temporary arrangement, but that will cause some issues with the import truckers or importers who plan to pick up their loads from the terminal, and they turn out to say, got a message, hey, no, your containers are not available. So if we can have that kind of timely data from the terminal, it will help us not only the avoid the customers' complaint or truckers' dry run. It can also help us manage our storage or demurrage invoice accurately, because for those days we have to cut them out because that's not available for importers, and we have to have some accurate invoice or bills as accurate as possible. So if that's something that MTO partners can provide to their carriers or in Yangming, that will minimize this kind of a confusion and errors. So that's my brief input and comment, and I hope I can have some kind of contribution, if even I'm not from IT or data side.
That's okay, Leo. We just want to hear the perspective of whomever Yang Ming wanted to provide, and I think it was good to hear about the information that you would like to see. It's sort of helpful. Everyone needs to provide information to the public, and they also need information from other aspects of the supply chain to make their operations better. So, Roman, you're up next. Sales Operations Director, Zim Integrated Shipping Services. We just spoke to your corporate leadership a few days ago, and so I look forward to your comments.
Very good. Thank you very much, Commissioner Bensel, for having Zim represented on this initiative. It's good that we're tackling some of these issues. It's also good to see the diversity of the panel, as well as last week's panel as well, because we're seeing the different perspectives from each side of the business. So as Leo mentioned, his little background, mine's a little bit more commercial focused, although I also reached out to my colleagues internally for the feedback and whatnot, but it's good. And I look forward to the summit coming up in June as well. So with that said, I'll tackle all the questions in a little bit different order here, but I do want to kind of start off similar to Commissioner Dai's comments. The key data elements that are integral to us as the carriers is the operations piece, right? When you break everything down, it comes down to the vessels. So those are the starting off with the key data elements. That's the vessels and the rail schedules. We have to work hand in hand with the rails to make sure that the cargo gets delivered to the customers. And those are the major events that also drive downstream elements. Leo mentioned the ERDs, for example. That's a major thing. Release notifications, and even on the import side, it'll drive whether customers fall into demurrage or not. So those are all critical pieces. At a more detailed level, container movement, gate activity, those are the critical piece, and honestly, those are what's most often asked for by our customers. They want to know where the cargo is when you simplify it. So those are the key pieces. Now, when you flip the script from our customers, starting off is the booking requirements. I know this was discussed on last week's call as well. Those are when you break it down, it's the commodity details, and those, even that's not standardized. We at least from our perspective, we do require the HS code at the 6-digit level. And that may differ from the different carrier lines as well. So that may be something that we look to, even though the HS codes are harmonized and standardized, what is required from each shipper when submitting the booking requirements could be one of those things. I think the origins and destinations and the routings is pretty standard. The equipment, that's obviously something that we require, but also the details around their equipment as well, similar to whenever refrigerated cargo or reefer boxes are requested, we also require the temperature settings and then other settings that impact the atmosphere inside that container as well. And then the last detail that we require as well is the rate reference ID or service contract number, especially when it comes to the exports, where some of the business may be moving on exports, other on tariffs, other on rate sheets when it comes to the non-FMC commodities. But that is a critical piece when it comes to rating, and again impacts the downstream data that we record and also pass on to the customers as well. In terms of data transmission and access, the majority of the data that we currently get now is via EDI, and whenever possible we utilize EDI, and that's simply because it's the more common, I'll say, data language, or again the tool that's being used. Our track and trace information is mainly API, and as you mentioned, Commissioner, it's because it offers more of a real-time live events. That seems that if that's a direction we can head to, that's an ideal situation, and that goes across the board from the supply chain as a whole. Of course, definitely some investment and resources will be required for that. And to one point, it's one thing that we get and send information regarding, again, going back to the core elements, is the vessel schedule, is a pro forma schedule, but it's another thing on the exceptions to the pro forma schedule. And in some cases, we're actually receiving changes to the schedules from our vessel partners via email or even a CSV. So when you talk about old school, that it still happens, and it takes manipulation and translation of that information or data, and of course, all that is going to create some inefficiencies. So standardizing that, if that's a possibility that we look at, that's one of the things. It's not just the core schedule, is changes to that schedule. That's going to help everybody.
Roman, you're talking about your shipping partners for space sharing in terms of that, because okay, all right.
Correct, yeah, and then Zim is a bit unique, that and a lot of people, a lot of the shippers and customers don't realize this. We charter the majority of our ships. We don't own the ships, but we still operate them. And with that, we have vessel partners just like every other carrier. So now, to address the data that we provide to the customers, again, as I mentioned, whenever possible, we utilize EDI. That seems to be the most common request that comes from our customers. Whenever we can't solve the requirements using our standard e-commerce portal, the majority, if not all, the carriers have our own e-commerce portals, and that's typically where we start, right? We have a menu of reporting attributes and elements and formats, how they can retrieve it. The challenge that we encounter, particularly with our customers, is when they require highly customized formats. And as you know, we're dealing with many customers that the numbers in the hundreds. So whenever we provide data or options, and then or it's requested that more detailed or more customized formats or elements that we don't typically require, that's where it requires resources, right? It requires resources from both sides, both from the customer side, because they're obviously translating some of the information, and from our side as well, because we have to manipulate how we provide the information. And in some cases, and in many cases, this seems to be growing more, is utilizing third-party technology companies to help that. And honestly, I think that's probably where the industry is going towards, and we're going to see more of that. And even in a panel like this, it'll help because they get to see the middleman view or window of all of this. But as goes with that, any change ultimately costs money, and that cost is shared amongst all parties involved. And ocean carriers as a whole, we want to be on the front end of technology, but it is critical to understand that it does take a significant amount of resources to keep up with all of that. As it pertains to any gaps, whether that's gaps in elements or data gaps, I didn't get too much feedback on that in specifically, although Leo did bring up a good point about the fall down. That is something that could definitely help the industry as a whole. That's something that we face, and it's a challenge that we face on a weekly basis as we plan our vessels. But I would say more so is the timing and the format of the data. And I think this is where the panel is really going to help the industry as a whole, because anytime something is standardized, we'll be able to deliver it faster. We'll be able to get that information faster. And then obviously using a common format is going to help everyone throughout the whole chain. But I think a key piece that we need to keep in mind is the exceptional cases. Those are always going to be a challenge because the timing is not a regular basis. And the timing is always critical when it comes to delivering data. And in some cases, we're getting information piecemeal or not a complete set of data. And that's where, again, manipulation needs to take place. So that's going to be a big challenge. And then I think that's something I'm looking forward to see if we can come together and solve for everyone. Outside of that, that's everything I have. So again, thank you, Commissioner, for having us. And again, look forward to how this develops.
Thank you, Roman, and thank you for taking the time to put together comments from your larger corporation. I think that's helpful, all of the comments. Jake Meehan, head of Ocean EDI Integration, Maersk, of course, one of the biggies and friends with the FMC. So go ahead and provide your comments.
All right, thanks, Commissioner Bensel. Thanks for having us on as well. As you said, I'm the head of ocean integration for Maersk, so very involved with data and more importantly, the exchange of data, more specifically. In Maersk, we've got thousands of integrations with partners all over the world, of course, consisting mostly of EDI. We have a fast growing portfolio of API users, which we're excited to see that growing area. We exchange everything from commercial and financial data all the way to operational and regulatory data. I think that's not a surprise to anyone. The amounts that are transacted even on a daily basis range in the tens of millions of files and documents. So EDI specifically is definitely a saver of resources and time that we like to tap into as much as we can. I know that I believe it was Simon talking a little bit about the 1-to-1 ratio when it comes to EDI integrations and how that can present a challenge, and it does. We've come a long way with standards around that to try to allow multiple customers, maybe shipping similar segments to integrate with the same solution, so that way we're not reinventing the wheel every single time and having to go through that process time and time again for what could be the same exact data set or solution that would be beneficial to both or multiple parties. So I think that's been one of the key areas where we've seen some improvements over the years. But again, furthering that, I think API is certainly the future, because that allows that standard set where it's almost self-serve, where you put out your information, your JSON files, and so forth, and you can see where the application can take you, and then you build your own app around it to access that data when and where and how you want it. So it really puts the usability into the partner's hands, so to speak, which is exactly where you want it. And that's where I think we see in many industries today, that's where you want the power, right, is in the user's hands or in the customer's hands. And I think our industry is just a lacking a little bit behind in that aspect. But we're getting there. I think the last couple of years has sped that up a little bit. I think one of the main challenges for us getting there is just because of the length we've all been in this industry has really made our technology stack pretty legacy, and that legacy is ingrained, for many years of moving containers, and we don't have the ability to just stop what we're doing to replace that technology stack with something new and then start up again. We have to do that integration while performing and increasing that performance, year over year. And having the amount of volume of data and, container movements that we have every day, ongoing nonstop, it's not an easy task to replace, a source TMS system that's been, your operational core backbone for 30 years. So I think the modernization of those tech stacks are really going to help us, but I think it goes back to where Commissioner Dye touched upon it, fixing your operations first, right, and then complementing those with technology. And so that's what we're really trying to focus on. I think our partnerships with many of the vendors, terminals, truckers, rails have all kind of been in that same direction and same strategy. It's just not an easy goal to hit, but we're all working towards it. So I think it's positive, definitely positive movement in this area of data in the shipping industry itself. I don't think there's any lack of willingness to help each other and partnerships. I think, at least in our experience, everybody around us wants the customer to get their cargo as fast as possible, have as much visibility to that cargo as possible, and access to all the data that they possibly can get, right? It's just enabling that is the key. So the good thing is, I think we're all on board here and in agreement. It's just finding the best ways to accomplish that is what the challenge is here. So certainly things like this panel and this group are contributing significantly to this goal. So it's really good to see. One other thing I wanted to mention about standards is just the DCSA, their work in kind of getting that standard approach with carriers interacting along with those third-party vendors. They have a unique niche kind of setting to where they don't have to deal with some of the legacy applications that we have ingrained in some of our companies. A new tech startup can use the latest and greatest and kind of jump straight at it and build it from scratch and take advantage of it. So I think there's definitely a certain voice there that should be included to help those who may not have that ability, but at least can get some good idea generation to seize any of those opportunities that are there with technology. But yeah, I think as far as the data and the key elements, we've touched upon it. Many others have touched upon it. It's the visibility data, key to operations. It's the booking and documentation data around, ensuring that a container or cargo can get from one place to another on a vessel, through customs, through terminals, and on and off truckers and rails as needed. But yeah, it's just the integral part of working all of the pieces as one is the challenge. And I think it'll present a challenge long into the future, but we're certainly getting better. We were better today than we were yesterday, and we're a lot better off now than we were 10 years ago. So hopefully this will continue.
Thank you very much. It's probably the most complex industry that I could think of in terms of, especially in the United States, we're probably even more complex than anyone else. But there's just literally hundreds of thousands of people that are in this industry. It's huge industry. Yeah. When you add in all of these other partners, so the adjustments necessary to take in so much data from so many different sources are probably more than in any other area it's certainly transportation area, but that I know, and it's formatted differently in multiple places. So yeah, and I liked your comments Again, I think John Young has sent out invitations to everyone. So virtually or in person, we'd love to have you continue to work with us. And I think Kathy Scott's next, VP of Shipping, IT, Digital Business, Crowley. And so we'd love to hear what you have to say, Kathy.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I wanted to just share real quick that I have enjoyed so much listening to I actually went back and listened to almost all of the previous interviews and have gleaned so much information and so much insight from it. And even in today's session with all the participants, appreciate your comments. And I'm going to kind of make mine brief because so many of the things I was thinking about saying have already been said and done. But Crowley's kind of uniquely positioned in that we're, both an MTO, a charter, ocean carrier. So I too, gleaned a lot of information from our different business units. But what it really comes down to is the timeliness and the accuracy of the data is a critical part of that. And I also agree with Simon in that EDI is such a challenging technology for us to use. And even though there are standards that are published, they're not always standard. So it goes back to what you'd think would take just a week or two to implement ends up being, 2 months at worst case scenario to get EDI up and running in some cases. So I believe, as Jake does, that APIs is the future. And we need to be looking at quicker ways to integrate and even webhooks. And there's a lot of technologies out there that if our industry can embrace would open up and empower so many of the other supply chain actors. So we're not limited to just doing the things the way we do today, but thinking outside the box and saying, how can we reach out? So some of the other things to consider are platforms. So many people are putting up data platforms, and we start to look at doing more platform to platform data communication sharing. I think that's a huge opportunity because the data is then centralized, and then you can publish APIs with Swagger contracts and basically make that data, as Jake said, self-serve. So now if I need that data, I can subscribe to what I need and get it more readily available. It's more centralized because the other challenge we have is just the disparity, to your point, and the complexity of the whole supply chain. There are so many points to get the data. So many points. So if the data was able to be more centralized, I think that would reduce significantly the complexity of all the connections and everything that we need to do. And then the final point is really on, I think Jake had mentioned DSCA as well. They're doing kind of an interesting just-in-time port call. And I thought to myself, that's kind of a different way of looking at it, as opposed to the ship vessel saying, this is our schedule, this is exactly when we think we're going to come in to port. It's more driven on the other lens, where the port is kind of sharing in collaboration with the ocean carrier, or I should say that MTO, when that berth assignment will be available. So now it's more of meeting in the middle, where it's like I have a vessel voyage that I'm moving. I can adjust my speed. I can kind of work towards that goal. The MTO understands all the complexities of what's going on in their terminal at that time, their availability, their capacity. This is when that berth can be available, and then merging those in that collaboration together so that you basically meet. And so I don't know if you guys have read much about that, but it's a very interesting initiative. And it kind of came to light through those other interviews when everyone was talking about the importance of knowing that ETA. And the ETA is really when it's available for discharge. It's not when it's at the sea buoy. So it's kind of working together to get when is that actual, time of discharge and when can we expect that cargo will be available for pickup. So anyhow, that's all I had in terms of.
Okay. Yeah, I agree completely with you. I'm always stunned that we don't have real-time information on vessel movements in terms of when they're making decisions. They know, and the terminals know when they're going to be able to get them in. And so sharing that information should be real time. There's just too much at stake. And there's some issues that maybe can be relying on EDI that are not as important or as capable of being transmitted. These are huge ships. It's not rocket science to do this, but it's setting the standards. We are working closely with DCSA, Jake and Kathy, to look at what they've done. We're not going to try to create anything new here. We're going to try to come up with standards and embrace information formats that the industry can deal with, and hopefully we can move towards more progressive formats as we go through the process. But if we get those common data elements together, I think it will allow the industry to decide. Sometimes not having a standard format precludes you from making investment in something because you're not going to invest in something that could be obsolete or counter to what the standard is. So, but great comments. We got Tom Takasi, VP Costco Shipping, and feel free to provide whatever information you want, Tom.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'll just go through the bullets from here. Topic 1 for key data elements as far as how Costco handles our business. This is also for import and export, but some of the key data elements that we need are booking data, bill rating numbers, custom status, event data, right? So we need to know, when the container is going to in-gate, out-gate, load discharge movements, container specifics, like seals, weight, BGM, and also, key information from the terminal, right? Whether the container is available to pick up, which we discussed in depth earlier. And also at the rail ramps. Shipping instructions from the shipper and any other related or required documents. As far as the data that we do not have access to or we would like to improve, we're noticing that we have notification holds from CBP and the USDA, but we're not receiving anything from the FDA, which is kind of like a wish list on our import team. If that was made available, or at least have visibility, because at the moment we're relying those notifications from the customer directly. Marine terminal operators and Canadian railroads, if they had the ability to transmit receiving windows, for us at the moment, we're having to currently check this manually. I'm not sure if this is a common theme across all ocean carriers, but for Costco, it's a challenge. And I guess having some blockchain options to share documents with our shippers, which I believe was discussed earlier as well. Having maybe EDI or direct EDI to arrange appointments with drayage companies, that would be a plus for us, and also direct EDI with the terminals and railroads for arranging rail billing for hazardous containers, which for the most part, Costco, it's a manual process. For general cargo, we do have an EDI connection there. And then just overall timely and accurate improvements of data from our shippers, and trucking companies, and marine terminals, and rail providers. Chassis status also. And then moving on to the next topic regarding data transmission and access. Basically how we get the data. Most of our data, booking data, event data, container specifics between Costco and all of our vendors is by EDI. Shipping instructions with the shippers, they're provided to us primarily through EDI. We do have an option for our customers to upload through our e-commerce website. And then we have a small percentage of shippers that are still old school and they're emailing it via an attachment, which obviously causes a huge manual process for us. Other required documents like hazardous documents, we require them to upload to our e-commerce website. As far as how we share our data to our customers, we have our e-commerce website where our customers can register. They can perform tracking and tracing. They can also, make their bookings, even handle some documentation processes through this website as well. They do have opportunities to subscribe to some reporting that's based on tracking and tracing, but it's not through API, so it's not really live data. So there's some improvements that can be had there. And obviously the customers can also access our customer support portal. This is our primary customer service window where they would just submit tickets, and then we have a KPI to respond to them timely for any of their requests, and also the phones. As far as our export challenges, ERD is probably number one, and I know it's been discussed heavily already. A lot of the challenges that we are facing here at Costco is that we're setting our ERDs with the customer and our notifications based on our vessel schedules, but as mentioned earlier, a lot of the communication between our partners are still through emails and stuff like that, so we're not really getting it timely. We have staff that are on the phones and emails pushing for the updates and information so that we can provide proper service to our customers. We do it at times when the ERD does slip at the very last minute. We may have customers, already send their truckers in to pull the empty equipment, and now they're sitting on equipment and can't return the container back because the ERD ended up slipping. And then it becomes a dispute on who's responsible for the cost. Over here at Costco, if we are unable to notify the customers in time, we end up absorbing those costs, and it's something that we would like to avoid if possible. And I think it could be avoided if the data is live, right? Another export challenge, which is not really based on data exchange, but a lot of the shippers are averaging between 50 to 60% fall down as far as what they're booking with us and what they actually utilize. And it's I know it's a pretty hot topic with the ocean carriers, but it makes it very difficult for us to manage our vessel space. It's a carrier problem, but if the shippers would help to participate in trying to reduce that, it would be a huge help with our operations, right? And then for the import challenges, and I think this was discussed earlier as well, just the better visibility as far as what our import loads, our containers are, what they're doing on dock at the terminal, right? Where they're stacked, where they're planned on being worked to make availability. Our number one request on the import side from our BCOs and our MBOs is really just, we know that the terminal is congested. We know our import containers are not available, but we need to have some kind of plan from the terminal as far as when they're going to be worked and when they're going to be made available, even if it's an estimated date. Like your container is stacked in this section, and we plan to get to it in about 7 days or something like that. But at the moment, it's a big question mark, even for us on the ocean carrier side. We can't provide these answers because the terminal is not giving it to us as well. So, our shippers, our consignees are in the MBOs, they really don't want to accept the answer of I don't know when this container is going to be made available. To them, it's not acceptable. It poses a big challenge for us, right? Lastly, I know there's a lot of talk about API, and maybe Costco might be a little bit behind. So most of our connections are, for data sharing is EDI, but Shanghai has developed an API for cargo tracking and for sailing schedules. It's not been announced yet, but it is something that Shanghai has been working on. And we also have a pilot for a blockchain EBL issuance, for issuance of the bill, transfers, surrendering the bill rating. It's currently in a pilot stage, and we're testing it out, but hopefully this will be available to the customers soon as well. But that's it for Costco.
That's great, really good. Well done. I think you got into granularity. I did want to turn back to a comment that Kathy made in terms of platforms. And there's certain areas, in my view, that there's some value in that. Trucking, for instance, it's a black hole in terms of trying to find adequate trucking and chassis and stuff like this. And maybe this is the sort of thing that should be part of a platform. These sort of common operational issues. But Tom, really good job sort of summarizing a lot of the different data elements that we need to take a look at. Dharmesh Patel, VP and CIO for CMA CGM America, and looking forward to your comments.
Thanks, Commissioner. Well, I guess it's the benefit of going last because everything's been said, but critical to our operations mostly deals with, transport order numbers for inland and cross-border rail and truck moves, and especially the customs informations for the clearances and hold status. Majority of the data elements that everybody had said is pretty much on our list as well, along with what we need for export. And I'll echo again, what we don't have is like ERD, rail plan versus actual truck delivery plan versus actual things like that, special requirements. On our data transmission and access, we receive wise, we're 90% on EDI and 8% on API, and the rest we do manual, whether it's email or fax. As a strategy, we have put in place to start investing in API this year, in a sense where we are going to start converting as much EDI to API as possible and help our customers and partners and vendors as well. And then how we provide data, it's split, between EDI and API. It's pretty fairly even that way. We also provide web services to our customers who are not capable of either of those. And then, we're trying to partner with them as much as possible in this. There's a few statements that were made where, API is the future. Actually, API is 20 years ago. We're way behind, right? So we have to get there, right? And that's one of the things that's stopping us from real-time data, right? Getting that information as fast as possible and not having to use our resources to just continuously build EDIs that take the 2 to 4 week efforts. You have reusable APIs. You have APIs that can be customized fairly quickly for new data elements, and the consumer can simply consume as they like on the fly. And so that's definitely where we need to go as an industry. And then there was talk about standardizing data. So yeah, identifying the master data across all of our companies and what would benefit the industry and the consumers as far as the visibility goes, that definitely has to be done. It's not a difficult task, it's just a painful task, right? It's just a bunch of data, and let's just agree on what's going to be called what, and identify those as the master data going forward, and then publish it. So don't mean to cut it short, but it's all redundant in the sense of the data elements. So that's all I had.
Okay, well, sometimes it's bad to clean up because everything's been taken care of, but that's okay. Don't worry. And I, all of you, I'm going to turn this over first to Dr. Kristen Monaco. She's going to give us an update on where things are, and then I'll come back and have some questions on the rail situation. I think a number of you have mentioned that booking for rail is sort of amazing to think that we can't get to an appointment system or advanced notifications on the availability of train sets on intermodal, that we're showing up with cargo hoping that we can get a spot, or you're getting a call at 6 o'clock the night before. But anyways, Kristen, are you there? And can you give us an update on what the next steps are?
Absolutely. I am here, Commissioner. So as the Commissioner has mentioned several times, we're heading towards our June 1st Data Summit. And as Kathy has mentioned, we've had a lot of these sessions that have a lot of really rich information. So currently what we're working on at the FMC on the staff side between now and the summit is sort of pulling together all of the information that we've gotten from the participants to date. This includes sort of pulling out the major themes, the answers to the key questions from the stakeholders, importantly, areas where we see consensus and areas where we still see some gaps or areas that need to be bridged. We're going to turn these into a set of recommendations on key terms and definitions, transmission best practices to present at the summit. And then the summit's really going to be a working event where the participants will sort of have on the spot feedback, give us their perspective on what we're missing, what should be added, what's the most important. And that will allow us to refine those deliverables. As with all of the materials from the MTDI, these will be made available on the FMC website, and then should result in Commissioner Bensel presenting his initial findings at the July 13th commission meeting. So we have a lot of work to do between now and then, but we've gotten so much rich information with an amazing amount of consistency and consensus that's really allowing us to pull it together relatively quickly on the staff side. Thanks.
Yeah, and I want to point out something. Our staff has been, we have just a fantastic staff here all the way through, from Dr. Monaco and BTA to the other folks that work with us. Just a magnificent group of people working on this, and they all care deeply about shipping issues and the industry. And so I wanted to thank them for all of their efforts on this. So we're going to hope that you can join us, at least virtually, if not in person, and rely on your expertise going forward. So I think we've sent out invites to everyone, or if not, we'll be doing so shortly, and take further steps consistent with what Kristen said. But I did want to talk a couple of comments on sort of areas where I see some issues, and my council and I went out to Chicago to visit with the railroads, and the way it's been described to me is if you have a rail transport issue, you basically need to show up on the day that you're supposed to have some spaces on a railroad train set to get to your inland destination. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of advanced information or ability to sort of do appointments or work out forecasting. And so if anybody wants to comment on that relationship, that interface, please just put your hand up, and if not, it seems to me that we need to do something more on that front, and also on the trucking issues related to drayage and the availability of equipment. We've got to come to a better understanding of the availability of equipment and drivers to transport cargo. So this intermodal leg, I'm less concerned about the carriers and the terminals, because they at least have a lot of data on where they are, and it's just a matter of coming up with harmonization. But any thoughts on this intermodal challenge and how we can get more information? Because if you can't move it from the terminal because you don't have wheels, it's not going to move. And if you're planning on using rail, which we'd like to do, we want more rail, intermodal rail. You have to sort of know what the plan is. So any thoughts on that? No one? Okay. Well, anyways, I think we're over time right now, but I want to thank all of you. Sometimes it's tough talking to a railroad about what your problems are with their service, but we can do that in the federal government. And anyways, I want to thank all of you for your service here. It's been great. A lot of interesting perspectives. I know it's difficult because we're asking everyone the same questions. We're doing that intentionally to make sure that we can try to get as much agreement as possible through that, and then we'll deal with the individual things. But we're reviewing the tapes on a regular basis and trying to come up with some recommendations that you can review. You're our experts. You're the people we're relying on. And a lot of times I feel sort of good because a lot of times in Washington, D.C., we focus on the CEOs. And here we're looking at the CIOs and the people that deal with IT and operations. And so it's your turn to shine on this issue, which is pretty granular when you get down to it. But it's critically important how we exchange information, given the constraints that we have on the shore side, in particular in the United States, and how important it is. I mean, we are looking at inflation that's been caused by some of the supply chain challenges that we have. And so, and there's not a lot of space, and your companies have carried more cargo than has been carried ever before. But still we need more from you because of supply and demand, and it's critically entwined in our economy. So we'll have to see if we can do better here, and we're looking forward to your help as we do this. So thank you very much. And this might not be the last, but it could. And so with that, I'm going to call it a close and appreciate everything that's been said.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Commissioner. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.